this then.
I don't know if I can without laughing. Are we starting?
Yeah, we're already starting. I can edit this part out, but I'm not going to edit this part out, but I can edit this part out. All right, this lesson is on subtracting mixed numbers, but this time we're going to have to do a little bit of borrowing when we do our subtraction. So here is our first problem. Yes, you need to draw the pictures. She'll be all right in a minute. Just give her a second. So here's an example of what we're talking about. Pretend we were doing a subtraction problem, 30 minus 19. Okay? We know we can't do 0 minus 9, so in subtraction we had to go next door to borrow. So we took one of our 10s, broke it up into pieces into our 1s so we could do our subtraction. We're going to do the same thing with our fractions. In this case I have 3 whole shapes, but I want to be able to take away one whole shape and then 1/4 of another one. In this case I don't have any pieces, so I'm going to do the same thing we did with our subtraction. I'm going to take one of my whole shapes, one of my circles over here, so I'm going to only be left with 2 whole shapes. And I'm going to divide this one up into pieces. I'm going to break it up into a fraction instead of leaving it as a whole number. I chose fourths because the problem is already dealing with fourths, so that way we have a common denominator. So I still have 2 whole shapes, but one of them I broke up into 4 fourths. I divided it up into pieces. Now I can do my subtraction problem. I can do 4 fourths minus 1/4 is 3 fourths. And then I subtract my whole numbers. 2 minus 1 is 1. So we're borrowing from our whole number, chopping it up into a fraction, into pieces, in order to allow us to be able to do our subtraction.
And we got to check to make sure that our answer is in lowest terms, which luckily it was.
It was
then
already.
we can move on.
All right, your turn.
Yeah, great.
Oh, hold on. So.
Oh, you're going to draw for me. Forget it. You're going to
Yeah, I'll draw for you because
thanks.
I don't think you can do that part.
So we're going to take one of our circles and we're going to rename it so that it has fraction pieces. In this case, let's go with 8s because that's not really in a half, but we'll call...
It's close.
Yay, I love when you mess up. All right, so now we have 8 equal size pieces in one of our circles. And since we took 1 away from the 7, we have to rename our whole number and make that a 6. So we borrowed from the 7 and made it a 6, and our whole, in this problem, we called 8/8.
Because we wanted to match that denominator down there.
Right. Drawing it in fourths like we did in the last problem was not going to help us out. So we have to look at that denominator so that we know what our pieces are. And we can subtract. 8/8 minus 7/8 is 1/8. 6 minus 4 is 2. And thank you very much for making it simplified.
Yeah, save us a step. But yes, you should check to see if you can simplify. Oh, a little too fast. So here's another one, but this one's just a slight change to us. We want to do 3 2/6 minus 1 5/6. So there is a fraction part here, but there's not enough to be able to do our subtracting. I only have 2 pieces. I can't take away 5. So similar to a subtraction problem, maybe we have
32 minus...
How about 34? Because that's what came to mind first. So there is something there, but it's not enough to subtract. So we have to go and borrow. That 10 that we borrow gets added to what was already there. So in this case, 14 minus 7 is 7. And we get our 17 for answer. So there was something there. When we borrowed, it got added on to what was already there. So same idea here. Instead of leaving 3 whole shapes, we're going to take one of them and chop it up into pieces. So instead of 3 whole shapes, now we have 2 whole shapes. One of them we broke up into 6 parts, so it became 6/6, but we already had 2 pieces there. So now we have a total of 8/6 to work with. It gets added on to what was already there, but now we have enough to be able to do our subtraction. 8/6 minus 5/6 is 3/6. Look, we get to simplify now.
Oh, yay.
2 minus 1 is 1. And then we have to simplify our fraction. 3/6, they can both be divided by 3. So I get 1 1/2. So in this case, we still had to break up one of those whole shapes.
I need you to cross off the 5.
Okay, she wants me to actually subtract away 5 pieces plus 1 whole shape.
Yes, I do.
So you can see how you have 1 and 3 out of the 6 pieces left over.
Thanks.
Feel better now?
I do.
All right.
Completed that.
You can write this one.
Thanks. So our
It's okay to laugh at her writing.
Hey, denominators are the same. We have 4 sevenths minus 6 sevenths. We still have that case where our first fraction is smaller than our second fraction. So we're going to take 1 away from the 8 and make it a 7. That whole that I just borrowed needs to be in sevenths. So 7 sevenths is what I just borrowed. Together, I have 8 and 11 sevenths. Anything to add?
No, you're good so far.
All right, now I'm going to rewrite.
No, you actually have 7 and 11 sevenths. My bad.
I just wanted to point out while I'm erasing this, we are working vertically today instead of horizontally, just so that you know.
These are the only problems I do vertically.
Oh, blah, blah, blah. I just keep the same method. Isn't that fancy? All right. Sorry about that mistake. 11 sevenths minus 6 sevenths is going to give me 5 sevenths. No simplifying for me. 7 minus 2 is 5. 5 and 5 sevenths is our simplified answer. And check out that handwriting.
That is very nice.
Thanks. Getting better.
All right, last problem. 4 and 4 fifths minus 2 and 3 fifths. A lot of you saw this problem, and the first thing you thought of is, ooh, I'm going to make my 4 into a 3. I'm going to add 5 fifths.
Because that's what we've been doing for the last 10 minutes.
But just because it's a subtraction problem doesn't mean you have to borrow. We don't borrow in every subtraction problem that we do. Same thing here. We have 4 fifths. We want to take away 3 fifths. I can do 4 minus 3. That gives me 1 fifth. I didn't need to borrow in this case because my top fraction was bigger than the bottom one. 4 minus 2 is 2, and I get 2 and 1 fifth.
So just like double-digit numbers, you don't borrow every single time you subtract. You're going to have to watch that top fraction or the first fraction and see if it is larger or smaller than that second fraction to see if borrowing is necessary.
So when you do need to borrow, like our first one, you're going to take 1 away from your whole number, just like in regular subtraction. That 1 becomes your fraction piece that gets added on over here. But the whole idea is keep that common denominator, so it's one less step that you have to worry about in your problems.